안녕하세요. 자, so far we have learned Korean basic structures like 이에요, 아니에요, 있어요, 없어요. And also we learned some expressions. 안녕하세요. So have you found something in common? 자, 있어요, 없어요, 이에요, 아니에요, 안녕하세요. They all end with 요, right? So when you hear Korean people saying, you will hear lots of yo. So how come they use lots of yo? So I'm going to talk about that today. So I wrote some verbs and adjectives here. 좋다, 좋다. What does that mean? 좋다, good, 그렇죠? 앉다, 앉다. What does that mean? To sit. 먹다, 먹다, to eat. 있다, so we learned 있어요, so it's the same word. 있다, to exist. 이다, 이다, what is 이다? 이다, 이에요, 아니에요? 이다, be. Not be. 아니다, not be. Oh, we learned 이에요, but how come I wrote like 이다, 아니다, 좋다, 앉다, 먹다? So they all end with 다. Verbs and adjectives in Korean, they change their form very, in a very variety of ways, depending on its tense and this politeness level and many other things. So they always change their form. We call changing the form of verb or adjectives is conjugation. Conjugate. So they conjugate their forms depending on the situation. So when you put those words in the dictionary, we cannot just take one form because they all have different meanings. So we just take the most important part, we call it stem, and add just meaningless 다 to indicate that they are either verbs or adjectives. So 좋다, 않다, so we call them dictionary form. So we learned 이에요, but we can say that different way. Like 이에요 is actually polite ending, but 입니다, we can change that. So today I want to talk about this polite ending present tense form 어요 and 아요. Then present makes sense. It's not past but just present. But what is polite ending? Polite ending. When you speak in Korean, you have to know the social relationship between you and the listener. So if you are talking to someone who is not close to you, like you go to a restaurant and talk to the waiter there, then you don't know that person, right? So when there is a social distance, you can use 어요, 아요 form. So it's a polite ending. So it's a polite way of speaking something to someone. And when you talk to someone who is older than you are, then you can use this 어요, 아요 ending. So we call it polite ending because we use 어요, 아요 ending when we have to be polite. So like this politeness doesn't just mean that how you think about other person. It's a kind of social norm. So even though you don't really, respect a certain person, you have to use polite ending. You don't really respect the waiter in a restaurant. You just met him for the first time, but still you use polite ending. It's a kind of social norm. And when you talk to your friend, but still who is older than you are, you may be able to 어요, 아요 ending. Maybe you can take 요 out if you are really close to them. So it's very complicated, and there are lots of factors for you to choose what kind of ending you take, you can use, in certain situation. But I would say oyo ayo is the safest form to use. You can use this form anybody. So that's why we introduce oyo ayo form at the beginning of this class. Then let's learn how to conjugate them into oyo ayo ending. So in the textbook you will see that in the vocab list you will see verbs or adjectives are all ends with da, 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 da. And you can take da out for conjugation. This is the stem chod. And take a look at the last syllable of the stem. Then we have only one syllable. So okay, take a look at this syllable. And if the last syllable has either o or a, then we take ayo. So okay, this is one syllable and it has o, and we need ayo. Then you can get this from 좋아요. 저는 한국어가 좋아요. So I like Korean. 좋아요. 좋아요. And 앉다, to sit. So verb or adjective, same. In English, we don't really change the form of adjective depending on its tense or others. We don't really conjugate adjectives a lot. Like, we add be verb in front of adjective. This is cheap. So you want to buy something. Oh, this is cheap, right? And this was cheap. So you change the tense for this be verb, but we don't really change this form. But in Korean, we change verb or adjectives depending on this politeness level and tense. So in this case, we conjugate verb and adjective, all of them. So what's the stem? An. Okay. And take a look at the last syllable, just one syllable, and it has, okay, a. Then we need ayo, right? 앉아요. 앉아요. I sit. 저는 앉아요. Does it make sense? Okay. And let's conjugate this verb 먹다, to eat. Then take the stem out, 먹. And check if it has o or a. Or it doesn't have o or a. Then we take oyo. So 먹어요. 저는 아침 먹어요. I am eating breakfast. 저는 점심 먹어요. I am eating lunch, something like that. And familiar word, 있다. So we already know this form. It exists. And does it have o or a? No, this is e. So we choose oyo. So you already know this form, 있어요, right? I am in the library. 저는 library, 도서관에 있어요, right? And we already know 이다, 아니다. So we already know the form, but this is a little exception. 좋다 is good, is an adjective, verb. 이다, 아니다. They are not neither verb nor adjective in Korean. So we just made separate category for 이다, 아니다. So they are copula. Copula is something connects two nouns. 저는 학생이에요. 저는 선생님이 아니에요. So we connect 저 학생, 저는 학생이에요. So it's a kind of a connecting word between two nouns. And actually they are conjugated in the same way as adjective. it's good to memorize its form separately. So E is the stem, and it's not either O or R, so it is supposed to be oyo, but it's irregular. Irregular. Eayo. So you just memorize this irregular form separately. And ani, ani, and it's not either E or O or A, so it is supposed to be oyo. But we don't say ani oyo, but ani eyo, right? So please just remember them separately. Actually, you already know them, right? And this is the basic rule. After O or A, you just add ayo, and otherwise oyo. But there are lots of exceptions too. Human languages, they have always exceptions. So the most representative exception is this hada. Hada means to do. To do. And many words end with hada. 공부하다, to study. 숙제하다, to do homework. So there are lots of words, noun plus hada, to make into a verb. But hada, it ends with a, so it is supposed to be ha-ayo, but it's a like irregular. 해요. 해요. If you really want to know its original form, it is supposed to be 하여요. Yeah, but in contemporary Korean, people don't use yoyo form often. So 해요, remember this, 해요 form. And 가다, what does that mean? 가다 means go. And what's the stem? 가. And does it have either a or o? Yes, it has a. But it doesn't have, syllable final position consonant. Then 가아요, 가아요. It sounds redundant, right? So we don't really add a here. Just 가요 is okay. So when a verb or adjective ends with a without any syllable final consonants, then you can just add 요, 가요. Like this, 싸다, to be cheap. So I just told you cheap. To go, to be cheap. And this is cheap. 이거는 싸아요. It's redundant a, so you just take a out. 싸요. 그죠? 싸요. And 크다. 크다 means to be big. And what's the stem? 크다. Does it have o or a? No. Then we need 어요. 그렇죠? 어요. But 크어요, 크어요. This sound is weak, so it is dropped very easily. So when the last syllable of a verb or adjective ends with and there's no consonants, then we just take out and 커요. Okay, some exceptions. We have more exceptions, but let me just introduce you to some exceptions. So 하다, so please remember this, very important. And after a, you just take a out. It's easy. It's very intuitively clear. It's redundant. And 크다, sound is weak, so we just drop it when you conjugate it into 어요, 아요 form. So I'm going to call this like polite ending form, or sometimes the 어요, 아요 ending. It means it's just a polite ending, present tense form. Okay, 오늘은 여기까지. 감사합니다.